Carol Burnett names the 5 most evil people in Hollywood. For over 5 decades, Carol Burnett has been America's comedy sweetheart, the red-haired wonder whose infectious laugh, remarkable talent, and genuine warmth made her a television legend. Her groundbreaking variety program, The Carol Burnett Show, ran for 11 seasons and earned 25 Emmy Awards, cementing her place in entertainment history. But behind that radiant smile and legendary ear tug lies a woman who has navigated the treacherous waters of Hollywood with remarkable resilience. Throughout her storied career, Burnett has encountered individuals whose behavior revealed the darker side of show business, people whose actions toward her range from personally hurtful to professionally devastating. Carol is America's sweetheart, but she's no pushover, revealed a former CBS executive who worked closely with Burnett during her variety show's heyday. She has an incredible memory, not just for comedy sketches, but for how people treated her along the way. She keeps mental notes about who showed their true colors when power or money was on the line. According to those closest to her, Burnett has privately maintained a list of entertainment figures whose actions earned her lasting contempt. Individuals whose behavior she considered not merely disappointing but genuinely malevolent. While her public persona has always emphasized positivity and grace, private conversations and occasional candid moments have revealed the names that would top her personal Hollywood blacklist. Tonight, we reveal the 5 individuals who Carol Burnett reportedly considers the most troubling personalities she encountered throughout her extraordinary career. People whose actions behind closed doors revealed a character starkly different from their carefully crafted public images. Now, let's explore the 5 names that reportedly earned Carol Burnett's deepest disapproval. Individuals whose actions she considered truly unethical or cruel, revealing a darkness beneath their carefully crafted public images. 1. Joe Hamilton, the husband who stole her work. When Carol Burnett married Joe Hamilton in 1963, it seemed like the perfect union of personal and professional compatibility. Hamilton, a producer and music director, had worked with Burnett on The Gary Moore Show and understood the entertainment industry from the inside. As producer of The Carol Burnett Show, he appeared to be her most devoted champion, the behind-the-scenes partner who helped bring her creative vision to life. They were television's power couple before anyone used that term, recalled a former CBS executive who worked closely with both. Joe had the technical production knowledge, Carol had the creative genius and star power. Together they seemed unstoppable. For nearly 2 decades, their marriage appeared to represent that rare Hollywood success story, a couple who could collaborate professionally while maintaining a strong personal relationship. They raised 3 daughters together and built what seemed from the outside to be an ideal family life alongside their television empire. The reality, as Burnett would discover, was far more disturbing. Secretly formed Hamilton Productions and claimed ownership of spin-offs like Mama's Family, revealed a former business affairs officer at CBS who had access to the contractual arrangements. While presenting himself as Carol's partner in every sense, Joe was quietly establishing separate corporate entities designed to control aspects of her creative output. The full extent of Hamilton's machinations only became apparent during their divorce proceedings in 1984. Court documents revealed that Hamilton had methodically positioned himself to claim ownership rights to intellectual property developed during The Carol Burnett Show, including characters created and portrayed by Burnett herself. The Mama's Family situation was particularly shocking, explained an entertainment attorney familiar with the case. The character of Mama, played by Vicki Lawrence, originated in the family sketches on Burnett's show. These were some of the most beloved segments, largely created through Burnett's collaborative process with her cast. Yet Hamilton had structured things so that when Mama's Family was spun off as a separate series, his company maintained significant ownership and control. Beyond these professional manipulations, Hamilton allegedly engaged in personal betrayals that compounded Burnett's sense of having been fundamentally deceived throughout their marriage. Hid assets, cheated, then coldly said, "It's business, not emotion," recalled a former accountant who worked with the couple. When Carol confronted him about using their marriage to gain control of her work, he responded with a callousness that shocked everyone present. It was as if the mask had finally dropped, revealing a calculating businessman who had been playing a role for 18 years. Burnett divorced Hamilton and engaged in a protracted legal battle to reclaim what she considered rightfully hers, not just financial assets, but the creative characters and concepts she had developed throughout her career. The process was both emotionally devastating and professionally challenging, requiring her to fight for ownership of her own artistic legacy. What truly devastated Carol wasn't the end of her marriage, explained a longtime friend who stood by Burnett during this difficult period. It was the realization that someone she had trusted completely, who had shared her bed, raised children with her, and been privy to her most vulnerable moments, had been calculating how to profit from her talent the entire time. That level of premeditated betrayal struck her as genuinely evil, beyond normal human failings. For Burnett, whose own childhood had been marked by adult betrayal, Hamilton's actions represented a particularly painful repetition of familiar themes: trust exploited, vulnerability weaponized, and love revealed as manipulation. The experience reportedly left her with a lasting wariness about combining business and personal relationships. Joe wasn't just her husband, said a former cast member from the show. He was the person who was supposed to be protecting her interests, while she focused on the creative aspects. Finding out he had been quietly setting up mechanisms to control and profit from her work was like discovering your security guard had been moonlighting as a burglar. Why he's on the list: backstabbing betrayal at both the professional and personal level. A man who systematically plotted to control her creative legacy while maintaining the facade of a loving husband for nearly 2 decades. But wait until you hear about the comedy legend who humiliated her in front of the entire cast.
I thought.
I didn't handle anything. The kid had me,
Yes, didn't he?
had me.
2. Harvey Korman, the friend who turned on her. For a decade, Harvey Korman stood alongside Carol Burnett as one of the pillars of her groundbreaking variety show. His impeccable timing, versatile character work, and legendary inability to keep a straight face during sketches created some of television's most memorable comedic moments. To millions of viewers, Korman and Burnett seemed to share a special chemistry that reflected genuine friendship and mutual respect. Behind the scenes, their relationship was indeed close and collaborative, until a shocking incident reportedly changed everything and earned Korman a permanent place on Burnett's list of profound disappointments. Once her most trusted co-star on The Carol Burnett Show, noted a former director who worked on the program for several seasons. They appeared inseparable on screen and off, collaborators who brought out the best in each other creatively and seemed to genuinely enjoy each other's company. This collaborative relationship extended beyond the cameras, with Burnett and Korman often socializing together and supporting each other through personal and professional challenges. Burnett had stood by Korman through difficult periods and had been instrumental in building his career as a television star. Carol was always Harvey's biggest champion, recalled a former writer for the show. She fought for his salary increases, gave him opportunities to direct, and made sure he received proper recognition for his contributions. She treated the cast like family, and Harvey seemed like the brother she never had. This context made what happened next all the more shocking to those who witnessed it. According to multiple production team members, the relationship deteriorated dramatically during the show's later seasons as Korman's ego apparently expanded along with his fame. What had been occasional moments of creative tension or normal professional disagreements allegedly evolved into something far more troubling. Verbally blew up on set, publicly disrespected the team, and took a direct dig at Carol, recalled a stage manager who witnessed the incident that reportedly marked the end of their professional relationship. It wasn't just unprofessional, it was deliberately humiliating, happening in front of the entire production staff and cast during a rehearsal for what would have been a major sketch. While accounts vary slightly about the exact content of Korman's outburst, insiders describe it as a calculated attempt to undermine Burnett's authority and diminish her contributions to the show's success. According to those present, Korman questioned Burnett's creative decisions, dismissed her ideas, and made comments suggesting that the show's popularity came despite her leadership rather than because of it. He essentially tried to stage a coup, explained a camera operator who was on set that day. It felt like he'd been building resentment for years and finally decided to make a power play. But he miscalculated badly. He didn't realize how beloved Carol was by literally everyone else on that set. What made the betrayal particularly painful was its public nature, a deliberate choice to maximize Burnett's embarrassment by challenging her in front of the entire team rather than expressing concerns privately. This public humiliation aspect reportedly struck Burnett as revealing Korman's true character and intentions. She fired him on the spot, despite their deep bond, said a former production assistant who witnessed the aftermath. I've never seen Carol make a decision that quickly or definitively. She didn't yell or create a scene. She simply said, "I think we're done here," walked calmly to her office, and instructed her producer to make arrangements for Corman's departure. While the public narrative around Corman's exit from the show was carefully managed to preserve both their reputations, officially described as an amicable parting as Corman pursued other opportunities, those present that day reportedly never forgot the look on Burnett's face as she absorbed the betrayal of someone she had considered family. It was like watching someone get stabbed and realize who was holding the knife, recalled a guest star who happened to be rehearsing that day. There was this moment of shock, then pain, then this calm dignity as she made the decision to cut him loose. She understood that allowing that kind of behavior would poison everything they had built together. The incident reportedly had lasting implications for how Burnett viewed not just Corman, but the entire dynamic of creative collaboration. While she continued to foster a positive environment and maintained close relationships with other cast members, particularly Vicki Lawrence and Tim Conway, colleagues noticed a new reserve in how she managed professional relationships. "Something changed in Carol after the Corman incident," said a longtime friend. Not in a bitter way, but in how carefully she observed people's behavior under pressure. She became more attentive to small signs of ego or entitlement, the warning signals she had perhaps missed with Harvey. Why he's on the list. Ego-driven sabotage disguised as frustration, the betrayal of trusted friendship in a vulnerable public setting designed to inflict maximum damage to her reputation and authority after years of her championing his career. The next name on her list made an inappropriate late-night call that crossed every line.
Around the other way. All the way around now.
3. Marlon Brando, the charmer who crossed the line. Marlon Brando revolutionized acting with his raw, naturalistic performances in films like A Streetcar Named Desire and On the Waterfront, before cementing his legendary status with The Godfather. By the 1970s, he had achieved a level of power and mystique unmatched by virtually any other actor in Hollywood. According to those close to Burnett, this power allegedly led to a disturbing interaction that demonstrated Brando's darker, predatory side. Called Burnett at 3 a.m., praised her, then got creepy and inappropriate, revealed a longtime friend in whom Burnett had confided about the incident. What started as seemingly innocent admiration quickly veered into territory that made her deeply uncomfortable. The incident reportedly occurred during the mid-1970s when both Burnett and Brando were at significant points in their respective careers. Burnett's variety show was a television institution, while Brando was experiencing a career renaissance following The Godfather and Last Tango in Paris. Their paths had crossed at industry events, but they weren't close friends or regular associates. According to those familiar with the situation, Brando's late-night call began professionally enough, expressing admiration for Burnett's comedic talents and suggesting they might work together on a project. However, the conversation allegedly took an uncomfortable turn as Brando began making increasingly personal comments and explicit suggestions. It started with compliments about her performances, then shifted to comments about her physical appearance, and finally devolved into explicit sexual propositions, explained a former assistant who was among the few in whom Burnett confided about the call. Carol tried to steer the conversation back to professional territory several times, but Brando was persistent and increasingly graphic. This behavior placed Burnett in an impossible position. As a woman in entertainment during an era when female performers had limited power, rejecting or criticizing someone of Brando's stature carried significant professional risk. Yet the content of the call was reportedly so inappropriate that maintaining a cordial response became increasingly difficult. She tried to end the call politely several times, the assistant recalled, but Brando kept talking, becoming more explicit and pressuring. It wasn't just inappropriate, it felt predatory, taking advantage of both his status and the isolated nature of a late-night phone call. The incident might have remained a private, uncomfortable memory had it not been for what happened next. Somehow, details of the call became public knowledge through Hollywood gossip channels, creating additional humiliation for Burnett. Rather than apologizing or maintaining discretion, Brando reportedly dismissed the entire situation in a way that cemented his place on Burnett's list of genuinely troubling personalities. "Media turned it into a circus," said a former publicist familiar with the aftermath. "Gossip columnists picked up the story, presenting it as Brando making a pass at Burnett. trivializing what had actually been a disturbing boundary violation. When asked about it at a press event, Brando responded with dismissive arrogance. According to multiple sources, when a reporter questioned Brando about the alleged inappropriate call, he reportedly said, "Carol takes things too seriously. Some women don't understand the difference between appreciation and harassment." This public statement essentially blamed Burnett for being uncomfortable with his behavior, characterizing her reaction as oversensitivity rather than a reasonable response to unprofessional conduct. That response showed exactly who he was, said a former CBS executive who worked with Burnett at the time. He used his power and reputation to not just cross boundaries, but to then shame her for having boundaries at all. It was textbook powerful man behavior. Act inappropriately, then make the woman feel crazy for objecting. This dismissive response, suggesting that Burnett was overreacting to what Brando considered harmless flirtation, reflected a callousness that reportedly troubled her deeply. It wasn't just the initial boundary violation, but the complete lack of accountability afterward that earned Brando a permanent place on her list of Hollywood figures whose true character disturbed her. Carol has always been a professional who separates personal and professional interaction, explained a longtime colleague. What bothered her most about the Brando situation wasn't just the inappropriate call, it was his public dismissal of her discomfort, the way he weaponized his status to make her seem prudish or unreasonable for objecting to being sexually propositioned out of nowhere at 3 a.m. The incident reportedly affected how Burnett approached interactions with certain powerful male figures in entertainment, creating a wariness that hadn't existed before. While she continued to work with male colleagues without incident, friends noticed a new cautiousness in how she handled one-on-one situations with men who exhibited even subtle signs of Brando's entitlement or boundary-pushing behavior. Why he's on the list: sleazy power play plus zero accountability, using his status to make unwanted advances, then dismissing her discomfort as oversensitivity when called out, effectively gaslighting her in the public eye. You won't believe what a Golden Age icon said to her face at an awards ceremony.
I'm very grateful to the Academy's Board of Directors for this happy tribute, and to Frank for coming here especially to give it to me.
4. Cary Grant, the elitist who mocked her to her face. Cary Grant defined sophisticated charm for generations of moviegoers, creating an image of debonair perfection that made him one of cinema's most enduring icons. His immaculate appearance, transatlantic accent, and seemingly effortless grace established a standard of male elegance that few could approach. According to those close to Burnett, however, her personal encounter with Grant revealed a much less appealing reality. A man whose elegant facade concealed genuine contempt for performers he considered beneath his station. At an award show, belittled her show, said a former television producer who witnessed the exchange. "Oh, that show? The one where she waves her arms and overacts?" he remarked within her hearing, clearly intending for the comment to reach her. The incident reportedly occurred at a major industry awards ceremony in the late 1960s or early 1970s, when Burnett's variety program was at the height of its popularity and critical acclaim. Rather than showing the collegiality expected at such industry events, Grant allegedly made dismissive remarks about Burnett's physical comedy style, comments specifically designed to diminish her achievements and artistic contributions. It happened during the pre-ceremony reception, recalled an attendee who was standing near Burnett when the comment was made. Carol was speaking with a small group of television executives when Grant approached a nearby circle. Someone mentioned her show's recent Emmy wins, and Grant made his cutting remark just loudly enough for her to hear, though he wasn't directly addressing her. What made the comment particularly hurtful was its deliberate targeting of Burnett's physical comedy, the highly skilled performance style that had become her trademark. By characterizing her work as simply waving her arms and overacting, Grant was not just expressing personal dislike, but attempting to delegitimize her entire approach to comedy. Carol calmly clapped back. "He never apologized," continued the witness. Without missing a beat, she turned slightly toward him and said something like, "Mr. Grant, some of us have to use our whole bodies to express emotion. We can't all rely on just one raised eyebrow." There was this uncomfortable laugh from everyone nearby, and Grant simply walked away without acknowledging her response. This exchange reportedly revealed much about both performers. Burnett, despite being blindsided by the unprovoked criticism, maintained her composure and responded with characteristic quick wit. Grant, when confronted rather than deferred to, retreated rather than engaging further or offering any apology for his unprovoked rudeness. Biographers later revealed she intimidated him, noted a Hollywood historian who has studied this period extensively. Grant came from a generation of movie stars who viewed television with thinly veiled contempt, considering it a lesser medium, but he was also notoriously insecure about his own limited formal education and lack of traditional training. Burnett, despite her humble origins, was actually more formally educated in theater than Grant, who had no formal training at all. This context helps explain what might otherwise seem like a puzzling interaction. Grant's contempt likely masked his own insecurity about Burnett's groundbreaking success in a medium, television, that he had never fully conquered, despite attempts to transition his career there. His dismissal of her physical comedy also reflected old Hollywood's general disdain for more democratic, accessible performance styles that appealed directly to middle America. What made Grant's behavior particularly troubling to Carroll wasn't just the insult itself, explained a friend of Burnett's, but what it revealed about his attitude toward female comedians and working-class performers who hadn't come up through the studio star system. His comments suggested not just personal dislike, but a broader elitism that dismissed entire categories of entertainment as beneath serious consideration. The incident reportedly created an invisible but permanent barrier between Burnett and Grant, a tension visible at subsequent industry events where they maintained cordial but distinctly cool interactions. While Burnett never publicly criticized Grant, those close to her noted that she mentioned this encounter when discussing the sometimes painful divide between television and film communities during her early career. Carroll never forgot that moment, said a longtime colleague, not because the criticism itself was so devastating, she had certainly heard worse, but because it revealed something ugly about someone whose public persona was built on charm and sophistication. The gap between Grant's cultivated image and his actual behavior struck her as particularly revealing about Hollywood's layers of deception. Why he's on the list: open disdain for working-class, woman-led comedy, the casual cruelty of old Hollywood elitism directed at a pioneer who had earned her place through talent rather than connections, revealing the hollow nature of his sophisticated persona. The final name on her list kept her from one of television's biggest platforms for decades.
Been on Saturday Night?
No.
You're kidding. They've never had Carol.
I would never kid you.
Would you host it? You should host it.
If I was asked.
5. Lorne Michaels, the gatekeeper who erased her legacy. Lorne Michaels transformed American comedy with the creation of Saturday Night Live in 1975, establishing a cultural institution that has launched countless careers and shaped humor for nearly 5 decades. As the show's creator and executive producer, Michaels has wielded extraordinary influence over who receives the career-defining opportunity to host SNL, a platform that has welcomed everyone from politicians to athletes to entertainment legends. According to those close to Burnett, Michaels also engaged in what she considered a deliberate campaign to minimize her contributions to television comedy through her conspicuous exclusion from this platform. Never invited her to host SNL, revealed a former NBC executive familiar with the situation. Despite multiple suggestions from cast members and writers over the years, Michaels consistently refused to extend an invitation to one of television's most accomplished comedy performers, a woman who had essentially created the variety sketch format that SNL later adapted for late night. This exclusion became increasingly noticeable as SNL welcomed other comedy legends as hosts, including performers from Burnett's era with less impressive television credentials. George Burns, Bob Hope, Milton Berle, and numerous other comedians from earlier generations received hosting invitations, making Burnett's absence seem less like an oversight and more like a deliberate choice. Dismissed her as not the spirit of the show, a former SNL writer claimed. Michaels allegedly told staff that Burnett's brand of comedy was too old-fashioned or variety show for SNL, despite regularly featuring hosts from earlier entertainment eras whose styles were far more dated than Burnett's adaptable comedic approach. This explanation struck many as particularly puzzling, given Burnett's demonstrated versatility and willingness to embrace edgier material throughout her career. Her variety show had often pushed boundaries for its era, tackling social issues and including more daring content than most primetime programming. Moreover, Burnett had continued evolving as a performer, taking on dramatic roles in contemporary comedy that proved her range extended far beyond the variety format. The "not right for SNL" excuse never made sense, explained a television critic who has covered both Burnett and SNL extensively. This was a performer who had mastered every comedy format she attempted: sketch, parody, musical comedy, improvisation, character work. The idea that she somehow wouldn't understand or adapt to SNL's approach was absurd to anyone familiar with her work. When fans and industry insiders began questioning the omission more vocally in the 1990s and 2000s, the responses from NBC and the show's production team were reportedly vague and inconsistent, offering scheduling conflicts or other logistical explanations that changed over time. When fans demanded she host, NBC issued limp excuses for decades, said a television historian who has documented the situation. The explanations shifted over the years: scheduling conflicts, content differences, miscommunications, but the result remained the same. One of television's greatest comedy talents was consistently excluded from America's preeminent comedy stage. What made this exclusion particularly significant was SNL's role in shaping comedy's historical narrative. As the show established itself as a cultural institution and launching pad for successive generations of comedic talent, it also became a key arbiter of comedy legacy through its selection of hosts. Being invited to host SNL represented not just a current opportunity, but a form of historical validation, recognition of one's place in comedy's evolving tradition. It was an erasure, said a former variety show writer who worked with Burnett in the 1970s. By excluding Carol from the SNL stage while welcoming other comedy legends, Michaels effectively wrote her out of the lineage he was creating, the story SNL was telling about American comedy and its important figures. For the woman who had essentially created the television sketch comedy format that SNL later adapted, this exclusion felt deliberate and pointed. After decades of silence on the matter, Burnett reportedly addressed the situation with characteristic understated dignity, making a rare comment in a 2023 private gathering that revealed her awareness of the deliberate exclusion without descending into bitterness or recrimination. She finally broke silence in 2023. "I guess they didn't need me, but I didn't need them either," a close friend quoted Burnett as saying during a small dinner with longtime associates. That simple statement spoke volumes about her recognition of what had happened and her refusal to be diminished by it. This quiet acknowledgement reflected Burnett's broader approach to professional slights, recognizing them without allowing them to define her or diminish her accomplishments. While the SNL exclusion reportedly ranked among her most significant professional disappointments, she maintained perspective about her overall legacy and contribution to television comedy. Why he's on the list: institutional erasure of a comedy legend, the systematic exclusion of a groundbreaking female performer from a platform that helped define comedy for subsequent generations, effectively writing her out of the historical narrative she helped create. The price of authenticity in Hollywood. The five individuals who reportedly earned Carol Burnett's lasting disapproval share a common thread. They each revealed character flaws that went beyond normal human failings to demonstrate what she considered genuine malevolence. Their actions toward Burnett weren't merely disappointing, but reflected fundamental ethical breaches: calculated betrayal, public humiliation, sexual harassment, elitist cruelty, and deliberate historical erasure. What makes Burnett's perspective particularly valuable is her well-established reputation for kindness, professionalism, and genuine collegiality. Unlike many celebrities who develop adversarial relationships throughout their careers, Burnett maintained positive, often decades-long connections with countless collaborators, from major stars to behind-the-scenes crew members. "Carol doesn't hold grudges easily," explained a longtime associate who worked with Burnett from her variety show through later projects. "Her default setting is empathy and understanding. For someone to make her most evil list, they had to reveal a level of cruelty or calculation that went beyond normal human failings. These weren't people who simply disappointed her. They were people who violated fundamental principles of decency she considered non-negotiable." This selective judgment reflects Burnett's nuanced understanding of human behavior, an ability to distinguish between ordinary imperfection and extraordinary malevolence. Having experienced genuine hardship in her early life and navigated the entertainment industry's many pitfalls, she developed what associates describe as an unusually clear moral compass about the difference between understandable weakness and deliberate harm. What sets these 5 apart in Carol's mind isn't that they hurt her feelings or created professional obstacles, noted a former co-star who remained close to Burnett throughout her career. It's that their actions revealed character flaws so fundamental that she considered them genuinely dangerous, not just to her, but to anyone unfortunate enough to be vulnerable to their power or manipulation. The patterns revealed in these 5 cases reflect broader issues within entertainment culture: the exploitation of personal relationships for professional gain, the weaponization of public humiliation, the abuse of power for sexual gratification, the persistence of elitism despite democratic success, and the systematic exclusion of pioneering voices from the historical narrative. For Burnett, navigating these challenges while maintaining her own integrity represented perhaps her greatest achievement, one that transcends even her considerable professional accomplishments. Her ability to recognize genuine malevolence without becoming embittered or cynical speaks to a resilience forged through early hardship and sustained through unwavering commitment to her own values. What makes Carol special isn't just her talent, reflected a former colleague who worked with Burnett for over 2 decades. It's her ability to see people clearly, their virtues and their flaws, without losing her fundamental compassion or compromising her principles. She recognized evil when she encountered it, but never allowed it to change who she was or how she treated others who deserved her kindness. In this sense, Burnett's private list of Hollywood's most evil personalities reveals as much about her character as it does about theirs, a testament to maintaining authentic values in an industry often lacking in moral clarity. Her ability to judge without becoming judgmental, to recognize darkness without being consumed by it, represents a different kind of performance, one more impressive than any comedy sketch or character portrayal. Carol's real legacy isn't just her groundbreaking television show or her incredible performances, concluded a longtime friend. It's how she demonstrated that success doesn't have to come at the expense of your humanity, that you can reach the pinnacle of an often cruel industry while maintaining your integrity and compassion. That's why people who know her well respect her even more than those who only know her work.